So this is going to be a review of Diner, the movie from 1982 that I had honestly forgotten even existed until I was reminded about it on a podcast. So I had never heard of the podcast Naked Lunch, but the main host is a guy named Phil Rosenthal, who's responsible for many of the popular television shows from the early 2000s, I believe. And also, I love him on his show Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix. And funnily enough, the only reason I ever stumbled upon the Naked Lunch podcast was because of my ketamine treatments. Because at the downhill side of those treatments, I sometimes like to take it off music and then just listen to something. Sometimes it's Alan Watts recordings, but one time just randomly, that podcast came up on Spotify, and I kept, the funny thing is, it kept coming up, like not every week, but over the course of a few months, I heard different parts of that same episode where they're talking about Paul Reiser's career, and the movie that gave him his big break was Diner. And it was a really interesting story how he got the audition and everything. The movie itself kind of stuck in my brain that I wanted to watch it, because if not for that movie, then we wouldn't have probably Mad About You, and he wouldn't have done that great turn in Aliens. And so I was really curious, what did his big break look like? And what it looked like was a mess. This movie is not good, and it surprises me when I go back and look at the reviews from that year, from that time period. There were a lot of positive ones, and I'd have to check and see what the Rotten Tomatoes score is for it now. Let me do that real quick. So the tomato meter has it at 92%, and the popcorn meter is 77%. And that really surprises me, because I didn't really care for this movie at all. There are two particular characters who are walking felonies waiting to happen. And it's funny, because I've never seen this movie, but the entire time I was having a deja vu feeling. And we'll get to that in a bit as to why exactly that was. The overall premise on a very basic level is a bunch of guys who like to go and hang out at the local diner and talk about life. That's fine. I get that. I lived that life. Most of my 20s were spent at coffee shops with friends, playing games, playing cards, drinking tons of coffee, eating lots of food. And so I get that whole scenario. It's set in like the late 50s, I believe. And as a period piece, I guess it looks good. Baltimore looked particularly downtrodden and grimy, and not like the most fun place to grow up. But beyond how well they managed to do all of the period costumes, cars, and everything else, the movie itself just is horrible. It's really uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable for me to watch. So the wandering friend, the prodigal son, Billy, I think his name was. Yeah, I barely retained any of their names. Comes back to visit all his friends because one of them, Eddie, is getting married. And Eddie is played by Steve Guttenberg, whose biggest claim to fame was probably the Police Academy movies, Short Circuit, and the Three Men and a Baby thing that happened. And he's going to get married, so everyone's talking about that, of course. And the friend group is pretty scattered as far as where they all are in their lives. Like Billy seems to have his stuff together more than anyone else, but he's back in town because he got a girl pregnant who came to visit him out in New York, and he's basically there to try to convince her to marry him. Paul Reiser's character, Modell, don't get a real feel for him. It's funny, he's like the first one of these actors that you see in the opening shot. And so you feel like, well, maybe the movie's going to be about him, like he's like a main character. But then after his initial introduction, he disappears for a long time before he pops back up again. His character is fine. It's Paul Reiser. I mean, Paul Reiser is Paul Reiser no matter what part he's playing.
What is that, roast beef? Don't ask me this anymore, Moldell. Yes.
You gonna finish that?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish it. I paid for it. I'm not gonna give it to you. No.
If you're not gonna finish it, I would eat it. But if you're gonna eat it, you're...
What do you want? Say the words.
No, go ahead. You're gonna eat it. You eat it. That's all right.
Say the words. I want the roast beef sandwich. Say the words, and I'll give you a piece.
Would you guys cut this out? I mean, every time. Anything.
Well, if he doesn't talk, he just...
Well, you know what he means.
Just like George Clooney is George Clooney is George Clooney. He's never... he doesn't have any range. It's just George Clooney being George, and it's just Paul being Paul. And his character is fine. He's the least offensive out of all of them because he's a mooch, and he's always really, he thinks he's always being sly about it. He'll never come out and ask for someone, you know, hey, can I have some of your, you know, like a bite of your sandwich or whatever. And I've known people like that, and, you know, he's fine. He's inoffensive. He doesn't do anything felonious or morally reprehensible, unlike some of the people in this movie. And so acceptable. I saw it and went, okay, yeah, Paul Reiser's career has been Paul Reiser being himself. Tim Daly is the one who plays Billy, the guy who comes back for the wedding from New York. And really the only thing I remember him from is the TV show Wings, him and Steven Weber. Daniel Stern, I know from Home Alone. Ellen Barkin is in this movie, and I had a crush on her from the first time I saw her, which was in Sea of Love with Al Pacino. She's gorgeous. She is intelligent. She's great. So I was really happy to see her in the movie. And her character, Beth, is married to Daniel Stern's character, Shreve. Weird names for these, like Modell. Paul Reiser's character, that's Modell. Okay. So Eddie, played by Steve Guttenberg, is getting married, and he is just a man-child. He lives with his mom still, and his mom is seemingly torn between wanting to get him the hell out of the house because it's time for him to go, and she's clearly going to miss him at the same time. There's a couple of scenes that really demonstrate that when he's haranguing her to make him breakfast one morning when his friend Tim Daly's character Billy shows up unannounced just to say, hey, I'm back in town. Let's go do stuff. And he's haranguing his mom to make him breakfast, and she's basically telling him, just, you know, breakfast? It's 1 PM, lazy. I'm not going to make you breakfast. And he just like keeps poking at her, you know, and to get her to do it, and she eventually relents. And you could tell, as much as he drives her crazy, she's going to miss him. The dynamic between the two of them was actually enjoyable. He, as a separate character by himself, is just a man-child. He has set this condition for his fiancée that the only way he's going to marry her is if she passes this 200-question quiz about his favorite football team, the Colts, because back then the Colts were in Baltimore. It was the Baltimore Colts. Yeah. And he is just obsessed with the Colts, and Colts paraphernalia all over his walls in his room. And so, yeah, if she fails the quiz, then he calls the wedding off. And everyone is like fine with this. The girl's parents are fine with it. His parents are fine with it. Everyone just takes it as this thing. It's perfectly okay for him to want her to do this, for him to make her jump through these hoops, and they're perfectly fine with whatever the outcome is. No one is like, everyone is taking this very seriously. And I guess it makes for an entertaining story, maybe? I don't know. I didn't find it entertaining. I thought it was crazy bullshit. I think that's just, wow. So yeah, his character is a whiny man-child who lives with his mom and works somewhere. I can't even remember where he works. None of these people seem to have jobs, except for one of them, Shreve. So speaking of Shreve, he's married to Ellen Barkin's character, Beth. And he, of the group, is the only one who's no longer single and freewheeling. He's been married to Beth. They probably have no business being married. It feels to me like they were together in high school and they were physically very much attracted to each other. But once all that, you know, goes away, and he even explains it this way, right? When Eddie, Steve Guttenberg, is asking, well, what's marriage like? Because I'm about to do this thing. How do you like it? His response was something like, it's okay.
You know, I can come down here, we can bullshit the whole night away, but I cannot hold a 5-minute conversation with Beth.
And the scene with him and his record collection, he like gets really upset and yells at Beth because whenever she listens to his records, she does not file them back correctly because he has them not only in alphabetical order, but alphabetical by genre. So rock and roll has A to Z and R&B is A to Z, and she should know which artists go in rock and roll versus R&B, and if she misfiles them when she's done listening to them, it just drives him crazy, and he just goes off on her, just freaking yells at her. He has anger issues, and she has internalized misogyny. So let me tell you about the two walking felonies in this movie. Mickey Rourke's character, Boogie, and Kevin Bacon is in this movie, and his character, Fenwick. And they're both just bad. Kevin Bacon plays Fenwick, who is a trust fund kid. He doesn't really seem to or have to work. We never know exactly how much money is given to him every month because of an inheritance from his grandmother. He like writes it off as being a very little amount of money, like $100 a month. Don't know if he's actually kidding or not, if it's more than that, but there's no love lost between him and his brother. And there is just something about him. When you see Fenwick on screen, you really want to tell everybody who might be in the room with him to leave the room, to not be in the same room with that man. And it's something to do with just Kevin Bacon. In this movie, every facial expression just gives creep. Like, he will look at you and then just smile as he sticks the butterfly knife into your throat. There is something wrong with this character. And everyone plays, you know, off his rambunctiousness as just, you know, oh, there's Fenwick. So anyway, Hey! Oh my God. The cat just pulled a whole bunch of stuff on top of her. He just exudes serial killer to me. I don't know, he's gonna kill somebody. There's a scene where he's watching a game show and he's, you know, getting all the answers right that the MC is, you know, asking the questions, and he's getting all the answers right before the contestants are. And so that's meant to tell you how secretly smart he is, and he just lets everyone think he's dumb. And I think he is smart. I think he's smart in the way, you know, people like Ted Bundy are smart. So the other felony is Mickey Rourke's character, Boogie. And I know he's like a handsome bad boy, but he is a menace. He has gambling issues.
Did you lay down a bet with Barnett?
I don't remember.
Yeah, right. Nobody bets $2,000 and forgets, but...
So what's the point, baby?
Well, the point is, but where are you going to get the $2,000? You haven't got a pot to piss in.
Look, the game's a lock.
Nothing's a lock, though. Nothing's a lock.
He has anger issues, although he's better than Shreve is. Shreve wears his anger and his emotions on his sleeve. And Boogie's anger is just always there beneath the surface. And he mostly directs it inward through placing just horrible bets, horrible in that the amount of money he bets is not great, considering he doesn't make that much as a successful hairstylist. He's always taking long shots thinking they're going to pay off and he's going to win it big. And he gets in trouble with a loan shark. There's just the one incident in this movie, but I get a feeling that this kind of thing has happened before. The way he treats women in this movie is awful. The whole movie is him trying to get in bed with this one girl that everybody basically refers to as being a nice queen, because she, you know, doesn't have sex, won't let anyone get anywhere with her, and so she's a goal for him. And so he's talking about this other bet that he placed, and they're in the diner talking about all of this, and he's all, well, hey, I bet I can get her to touch my penis. And they're all like, no, never going to happen. And he's all, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make it happen at the Strand, which you later find out is a movie theater. And they're all like, no way is this going to happen in public. He's all, no, you guys should come along. Just sit in the same row or whatever, and you can watch it happen. The setup is, because you know exactly what he's doing, right? He's got the box of popcorn on his lap, and he's going to put his thing up in it so that she like reaches in for the popcorn and grabs it, kind of thing. And it's just so slimy, the whole thing, because he is just so pleased with himself. She has no idea what's about to happen. His two friends are like 5 seats down in the row, just kind of looking over to see if it's happened yet, you know, just waiting for it. And when it does, of course, she just like freaks out and leaves, right, runs out, and he follows her. Of course, she would do that, but then she runs into the ladies' room and he follows her in there, and he manages to convince her that it was an accident. Oh my God, this scene is just so... And so she ends up leaving the movie with him. They like leave together. They finish watching the movie, and then she leaves with him. So yeah, sexual assault, and probably not the first time. And so the end of the movie is all of them coming together for Eddie marrying this girl, and you never see the girl on camera. You never see her face anyways. During the wedding scene, you see her from the back, you know, the dress and everything, and she throws her bouquet in a really, I'm sure it was a neat looking effect at the time in 1982, but the bouquet bouncing over the hands and heads of the bridesmaids and other people. I think there was just like random women, maybe, because there were so many of them. The bouquet just bounces off the top of their hands and their heads, and it just goes back, and it keeps rolling, and you keep getting this weird cut scene to where it's the guys at their table talking with each other, and then the bouquet bouncing, and then suddenly it just lands on their table, and they all look at it like, and then that's where the movie ends, really. There's an hour and a half, and I don't feel completely cheated out of that time in my life. Not as badly as I did with The Fifth Element and The Ninth Gate. Those are both still so much worse than this for different reasons. But I mentioned at the very beginning of the review that I kept having this feeling of deja vu, and the reason is that someone remade this movie and didn't call it Diner. They called it Beautiful Girls. Beautiful Girls feels like this same movie, just done many, many, many years later. You've got the friend who comes back to town from being in New York, strangely enough, to visit his friends, I think, over the holidays. It's set during the holiday season. So you've got that character. You've got the brooding, handsome, bad boy guy played by Matt Dillon. So I liken him to the spiritual successor to Boogie in this. And then you've got just the man-child who treats women like objects and thinks of them that way. They're just there to make him feel good, basically, played by Michael Rappaport. And so he is the analog to Eddie, Steve Guttenberg's man-child character from Diner. But of the two, and they're both problematic movies, really, I enjoyed Beautiful Girls more than Diner because there was a note, a tone to Beautiful Girls that was a little more optimistic. There was more warmth to the story somehow, whereas Diner just feels cold, grimy, gritty, felonious. It's just, yeah. Of the two, if you're going to tell me I need to watch one of them, then Beautiful Girls is the one I would pick, and that's the one that I would recommend you watch. If you're looking at watching either of these two and you're not quite sure, then I would say go with Beautiful Girls. There's a fun little turn by Rosie O'Donnell in there that was actually really funny. There it is. This is my first time doing a movie review on this channel, I think, and yeah, I wanted to try something different. Thanks for sticking around this long. If you actually made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me some sort of a film-related emoji, like, you know, the movie spools, or like the clapboard, or, you know, something movie-related to let me know you made it all the way to the end. And yeah, until next time, I'm Ken. You take care.